Have you ever picked up your phone just to check the time, only to realize that 40 minutes have disappeared? Have you ever opened a book with the intention of reading one chapter, but after just a few pages your mind drifted somewhere else? Maybe you promised yourself that today would be productive, yet somehow the day slipped away through endless scrolling, notifications, and unfinished tasks. If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. Most people believe they have a discipline problem. They think they are lazy, distracted, or simply not strong enough to stay focused. Every failed attempt at concentrating makes them blame themselves a little more. They watch others appear productive and wonder, why can't I be like them? But what if the problem isn't you? What if your attention is being pulled away by forces that were carefully designed to do exactly that? Today's journey is based on the powerful book Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. In this book, the author explores one of the biggest hidden crises of modern life, the gradual disappearance of our ability to pay attention. This isn't just a book about smartphones or social media. It's about the invisible systems shaping our thoughts, habits, relationships, creativity, and even our future. It explains why focusing has become harder than ever before and, more importantly, what we can do to reclaim our minds. By the end of this summary, you won't simply learn productivity tricks. You'll understand why millions of intelligent and hardworking people struggle to concentrate, and you'll discover practical ways to protect something more valuable than money or time, your attention. If you enjoy thoughtful book summaries that help you grow mentally, professionally, and personally, make sure to subscribe to Volume and Vision and join us on this journey of lifelong learning. Now, let's begin. Imagine a young professional named Daniel. Daniel was never considered irresponsible. During school he wasn't the top student, but he was reliable. He completed assignments, respected deadlines, and believed that with enough effort he could build a successful future. As the years passed, something slowly changed. There wasn't a dramatic event that ruined his focus. Instead, tiny habits quietly took control of his life. Every night he stayed awake just a little longer watching videos. Every morning he pressed the snooze button one more time. Whenever he sat down to study or work, his phone seemed to demand attention every few minutes. At first these interruptions felt harmless. Just one notification, just one message, just one short video. Each interruption lasted only a minute or two. Or so he believed. Those 2 minutes often became 20. 20 became 40. Before he realized it, the most productive hours of his day had disappeared. Every evening he felt guilty. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow he would finally become disciplined. Tomorrow he would stay away from distractions. But tomorrow always looked strangely similar to yesterday. After repeating this cycle for months, Daniel reached a painful conclusion. There must be something wrong with me. He believed successful people possessed extraordinary self-control while he simply lacked discipline. Many of us tell ourselves the same story. We compare ourselves with entrepreneurs who claim to work 16 hours a day. We compare ourselves with students who post perfect study schedules online. We compare ourselves with creators who seem endlessly productive. Eventually we convince ourselves that everyone else has figured life out except us. This belief becomes dangerous because once we accept that we are fundamentally broken, we stop looking for the real causes. Johann Hari argues that this self-blame hides a much bigger truth. Our attention is under attack. Not by accident, not occasionally, but every single day. For thousands of years, human attention evolved in environments completely different from today's world. Our ancestors lived where silence existed. Conversations happened face to face. Information traveled slowly. Entertainment required effort. Most importantly, nothing competed for every second of their attention. Today the opposite is true. Every app, every website, every platform, every advertisement competes to keep your eyes glued to a screen. The longer you stay, the more valuable you become. Your attention has become one of the world's most profitable resources. Think about that for a moment. Most online services appear free. You don't pay money to open social media. You don't pay each time you search something online. You don't pay to watch endless short videos. So how do these companies earn billions of dollars? The answer is surprisingly simple. They sell attention. Every extra minute you remain on a platform creates another opportunity to show advertisements, collect data, predict your behavior, and influence future decisions. In other words, your attention is the product. Once you understand this, something important changes. When you find yourself unable to stop scrolling, it isn't necessarily because you are weak. You're interacting with products built by thousands of highly skilled psychologists, designers, engineers, and data scientists whose full-time job is making sure you don't leave. Imagine walking into a casino. There are no clocks. Bright lights flash constantly. Pleasant sounds reward every tiny action. The environment encourages you to stay longer than you intended. Now imagine carrying that casino in your pocket 24 hours a day. That's much closer to today's digital world than many people realize. Daniel never thought about any of this. Whenever he lost focus, he blamed himself. One afternoon he met an old friend named Ethan at a quiet cafe. Daniel sighed. "I don't understand what's happening to me. I can't stay focused anymore." Ethan smiled. "Do you really think you're the only person feeling this way?" Daniel shrugged. "It feels like everyone else manages just fine." Instead of answering directly, Ethan asked him to unlock his phone. "Open your favorite social media app." Daniel did. Within seconds a short video started playing. When it ended, another appeared instantly. Then another. Each one seemed strangely interesting. Some were funny, some were emotional, some taught useful facts, some perfectly matched his hobbies. Ethan asked another question. "Have you ever wondered why these videos seem to know exactly what you want to watch?" Daniel admitted he hadn't. Ethan explained. "Every pause, every swipe, every like, every replay teaches the system something about you. It isn't randomly showing content. It is learning. The more it learns, the longer you stay. And the longer you stay, the more money the platform earns." Daniel stared silently at the screen. He had always assumed the app simply displayed whatever people uploaded. He never realized sophisticated algorithms constantly adjusted themselves based on his behavior. The platform wasn't waiting for his attention. It was actively competing for it. This realization changed something inside him. For the first time he stopped asking, "Why am I so weak?" Instead he began asking, "What exactly am I fighting against?" That single question marks the beginning of almost every meaningful transformation. Because before solving a problem, we must first identify it correctly. Imagine asking someone to resist eating dessert while surrounding them with cakes, chocolates, cookies, and fresh pastries all day long. Eventually, resisting becomes exhausting. The problem isn't simply willpower. The environment matters. Our digital environment works in much the same way. Every notification whispers that something important might be happening. Every red badge signals unfinished business. Every vibration creates curiosity. Our brains evolved to notice new information because, throughout history, paying attention to something unexpected often helped people survive. Technology now exploits that ancient instinct. Whenever something unexpected appears on your phone, your brain experiences a small burst of anticipation. You don't even have to enjoy what you find. The expectation itself becomes rewarding. This explains why many people unlock their phones hundreds of times every day without any conscious decision. They're not making deliberate choices. They're responding to habits carefully reinforced over months or even years. Daniel started observing his own behavior. He noticed something surprising. He rarely checked his phone because he genuinely needed information. Most of the time he reached for it automatically. Sometimes he was bored, sometimes stressed, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes facing a difficult task. Whenever his brain encountered even a tiny amount of mental discomfort, it searched for an easy escape. And the phone always offered one. Modern technology provides endless opportunities to avoid difficult emotions. Feeling anxious? Watch a video. Feeling lonely? Open social media. Feeling uncertain? Refresh your news feed. Feeling mentally tired? Scroll for a while. These actions temporarily reduce discomfort, but they also train the brain to avoid sustained attention. Little by little, concentration becomes weaker. Not because intelligence disappears, not because motivation vanishes, but because the brain grows accustomed to constant stimulation. Johann Hari argues that this change affects much more than productivity. It changes how we think. Deep thinking requires uninterrupted time. Creative ideas rarely appear in the middle of constant interruptions. Understanding complex topics demands patience. Meaningful conversations require presence. When attention fragments, every one of these abilities begins to suffer. Daniel remembered from childhood. As a teenager he could spend entire afternoons reading novels. Hours disappeared without effort. He became completely immersed in the story. Now, reading 10 pages felt difficult. He often reread the same paragraph because his thoughts kept wandering elsewhere. At first he assumed he had become less intelligent. Now he wondered whether his environment had quietly reshaped his mind. This wasn't just his experience. Researchers around the world had begun observing similar patterns across different age groups and professions. Students struggled to finish chapters without checking their phones. Employees switched constantly between emails, messages, meetings, and documents. Even experienced professionals reported increasing difficulty maintaining deep concentration. The issue stretched far beyond personal habits. It reflected a cultural transformation. Society had slowly normalized interruption. Being constantly available became a badge of responsibility. Responding instantly seemed professional. Checking notifications during conversations became acceptable. Multitasking became something people proudly listed as a skill. Yet the human brain was never designed to perform several mentally demanding tasks simultaneously. What we call multitasking is usually rapid task switching. And every switch comes with a hidden cost. Imagine writing an important report. After 20 minutes your phone vibrates. You reply to a message. Then you return to the report. Although it feels like only a minute passed, your brain doesn't instantly recover the same level of concentration. It must rebuild context, reconnect ideas, recover momentum. That rebuilding process quietly consumes mental energy. Multiply this by dozens of interruptions every day. Suddenly the reason behind chronic mental exhaustion becomes much easier to understand. Daniel wasn't simply losing minutes. He was losing entire states of deep thinking. The interruptions seemed tiny. Their consequences were enormous. Slowly, another realization emerged. Maybe productivity wasn't about squeezing more tasks into each hour. Maybe it was about protecting uninterrupted attention from unnecessary interruptions. That simple shift in perspective would become one of the most important lessons of his journey. The next morning, Daniel decided to run a simple experiment. Instead of promising himself that he would study all day, he made one realistic commitment. For the next 2 hours, I will protect my attention. He turned his phone to silent mode. Instead of leaving it on the desk, he placed it in another room. He closed unnecessary tabs on his computer. He told his family that unless something was urgent, he didn't want to be disturbed for the next couple of hours. The room suddenly felt unusually quiet. At first, that silence was uncomfortable. Within just a few minutes, he felt the urge to check his phone. His mind invented excuses. What if someone texted me? What if I received an important email? What if I'm missing something? Nothing had actually happened. His brain had simply become accustomed to expecting interruptions. He ignored the urge and continued reading. The first 10 minutes felt difficult. The next 10 became easier. After about 30 minutes, something unexpected happened. Instead of fighting to stay focused, concentration began to feel effortless. Ideas connected naturally. The pages no longer seemed difficult. He wasn't forcing himself anymore. He had entered what psychologists often call a flow state. Many of us have experienced this without realizing it. Perhaps while solving a challenging problem. Writing, painting, playing music, coding, reading an engaging novel, or even having a meaningful conversation. Time seems to disappear. The outside world fades away. The work itself becomes rewarding. You stop thinking about focusing because you are completely immersed. Flow is one of the most productive mental states a human being can experience. Unfortunately, modern life rarely allows us to reach it. Why? Because flow doesn't begin immediately. It takes time. Your brain needs a period of uninterrupted concentration before it reaches that deeper level. Imagine heating a pot of water. For several minutes, nothing dramatic appears to happen. Then gradually the temperature rises until the water finally boils. Now imagine turning off the stove every few minutes. The water keeps cooling before reaching the boiling point. You never get the result you're working toward. Attention works in a remarkably similar way. Every interruption cools your mental momentum. Every notification forces your brain to start warming up again. This hidden cost is one of the central ideas discussed throughout Johann Hari's research. Psychologists often refer to it as switch cost. Although switching between tasks feels quick, Your brain doesn't instantly move from one complex activity to another. A part of your attention remains attached to the previous task. Researchers have found that after an interruption, it can take much longer than most people expect to fully regain the same level of concentration. Think about your own day. You're writing an assignment, a message appears, you reply, then you check another notification. Someone sends a funny video. You watch it, you return to your assignment. You may feel like you only lost 2 or 3 minutes. But mentally, you're rebuilding your focus almost from the beginning. This process repeats dozens of times every day. Eventually, your brain spends more energy switching than actually thinking. Daniel suddenly understood why his evenings always felt exhausting. He wasn't working continuously, he was constantly restarting. That realization completely changed the way he looked at productivity. For years, he believed successful people possessed extraordinary discipline. Now he noticed something different. The most productive people weren't necessarily working harder. They were protecting their attention better. There is a huge difference. Working harder often means increasing effort. Protecting attention means reducing unnecessary interruptions before they happen. This may sound simple, but it changes everything. Imagine 2 students preparing for the same examination. The first studies for 6 hours while checking messages every 10 minutes. The second studies for only 4 hours but removes every distraction during that time. Who is likely to understand more? Most people automatically choose the first student because 6 is greater than 4. But deep learning doesn't depend only on time. It depends on the quality of attention. 4 hours of uninterrupted thinking can often produce far greater results than 6 hours filled with constant interruptions. Johann Hari argues that modern culture celebrates busyness while quietly destroying focus. People proudly say things like, "I answered 200 emails today. I attended 8 meetings. I replied instantly to every message." But activity isn't the same as meaningful progress. Being busy doesn't necessarily mean moving forward. Sometimes busyness simply hides distraction. Daniel noticed another interesting habit. Whenever he faced a difficult chapter, his urge to check his phone became much stronger. Easy tasks rarely tempted him. Hard tasks did. That observation revealed something important. Distraction isn't always about entertainment. Sometimes it's about escaping discomfort. Our brains naturally prefer certainty over confusion. When a problem becomes challenging, uncertainty creates tension. The quickest way to escape that uncomfortable feeling is to switch to something easier. A notification, a short video, a conversation, anything that offers immediate satisfaction. Unfortunately, every escape teaches the brain the same lesson. Whenever work becomes difficult, avoid it. Over time, this habit becomes automatic. Without realizing it, we train ourselves to abandon challenging thinking before breakthroughs can happen. That is one reason creativity seems to disappear. Creative work almost always begins with confusion. Writers face blank pages. Scientists face unanswered questions. Artists face uncertainty. Entrepreneurs face problems with no obvious solutions. If every uncomfortable moment is interrupted, the mind never remains with the problem long enough to solve it. Great ideas rarely appear instantly. They emerge after sustained attention. This explains why some of humanity's greatest discoveries required long periods of uninterrupted thinking. Scientists spent years exploring a single question. Authors disappeared into libraries for months. Inventors repeatedly failed before discovering successful designs. Their greatest advantage wasn't necessarily intelligence. It was uninterrupted attention. Daniel realized something uncomfortable. He had slowly become addicted to immediate rewards. Not because he lacked ambition. Because immediate rewards surrounded him every hour of the day. Every notification offered instant novelty. Every video offered instant entertainment. Every scroll promised another surprise. Compared to these quick rewards, studying seemed painfully slow. Reading required patience. Learning demanded effort. Mastering skills took months or years. His brain had unconsciously started comparing long-term achievements with instant digital rewards. That comparison was impossible to win. The modern attention economy constantly rewards speed. Real growth rewards patience. These two systems often pull us in opposite directions. One evening Daniel met Ethan again. "I think I understand the problem now," Daniel said. "But understanding it hasn't completely solved it." Ethan nodded. "Understanding is only the beginning. Awareness doesn't eliminate temptation. It simply allows you to recognize. Daniel looked puzzled. So what should I actually do? Ethan smiled. Instead of trying to become stronger than every distraction, become smarter than them. There is a difference, he continued. Most people depend entirely on willpower. They keep their phones beside them. They leave notifications on. They open dozens of browser tabs. They study with television playing in the background. And then they wonder why concentrating feels impossible. That's like trying to stay dry while standing in the rain. The smarter solution isn't stronger willpower. It's carrying an umbrella. Daniel laughed. The comparison made perfect sense. Success isn't only about resisting temptation. It's also about designing environments where temptation appears less frequently. This idea may seem obvious, yet most people ignore it. Imagine wanting to eat healthier while filling your kitchen with junk food. Or trying to sleep early while drinking coffee before bed. Environment quietly shapes behavior. Attention works exactly the same way. If your workspace constantly reminds you of distractions, your brain will naturally drift toward them. If your environment encourages focus, concentration becomes easier. Notice the difference. Not effortless, just easier. That small difference matters enormously because human behavior follows the path of least resistance. Johann Hari repeatedly emphasizes that many of our struggles aren't failures of character. They're failures of environment. Modern workplaces interrupt employees with endless meetings. Schools expect students to multitask. Families often normalize constant digital interruptions. Even leisure has become fragmented. Watching a movie while checking social media, listening to a podcast while replying to emails, eating dinner while scrolling videos, walking while consuming content, waiting in line while refreshing notifications. Our minds rarely experience uninterrupted presence anymore. Daniel decided to change one more habit. Instead of checking messages whenever they arrived, he scheduled specific times during the day. Morning, afternoon, evening. Outside those windows, messages could wait. The first few days felt strange. He worried people might become upset. Instead, something surprising happened. Almost nothing was truly urgent. Most messages could easily wait an hour or two. The world continued exactly as before. Only his mind felt different. For the first time in years, he noticed long stretches of silence. And within that silence, his thoughts became clearer. Not because life had become easier. Because his attention finally had room to breathe. That realization opened the door to another fascinating idea explored throughout stolen focus. Protecting attention isn't only about avoiding distractions. It's also about creating the mental space where imagination, insight, and original thinking can finally return. And that may be even more valuable than productivity itself. One weekend, Daniel decided to do something that felt almost impossible. He went for a walk without carrying his phone. At first, it felt strangely uncomfortable. His hand instinctively reached for his pocket every few minutes, only to remember that there was nothing there. Without music, podcasts, or notifications, the silence seemed almost overwhelming. For the first 5 minutes, he felt restless. His mind searched for something to consume. A video, a message, a headline, anything. But there was nothing. So, for the first time in a long while, his mind had no choice but to face itself. As he continued walking, something unexpected happened. Thoughts that had been buried beneath endless streams of information slowly began to surface. He remembered a conversation he had ignored weeks ago. He reflected on a mistake he had made at work. He started connecting ideas from a book he had recently read. Without trying, solutions to problems that had been bothering him suddenly appeared. It wasn't magic, it was something psychologists call mind wandering. At first glance, the phrase sounds negative. Most of us have been taught that if our minds wander, we're being unproductive. Schools tell students to stop daydreaming. Offices reward constant activity. Society praises people who always appear busy. But Johann Hari explains that there are actually two very different kinds of mind wandering. The first happens when your attention is stolen against your will. You're trying to study, but notifications interrupt you. You're reading a book, but your mind keeps jumping toward your phone. This type of wandering weakens concentration. The second kind is completely different. It happens when your brain is free from external distractions. You're walking, looking out of a train window, taking a shower, Sitting quietly after finishing an important task. Your mind begins making connections on its own. Ideas merge, memories reorganize themselves, problems receive unexpected solutions. Far from being a weakness, this type of wandering is one of the brain's greatest strengths. Think about some of the best ideas you've ever had. They probably didn't appear while staring intensely at a screen. Many people discover their best ideas while driving. Others find them during a morning walk. Some think most clearly while washing dishes or watering plants. Why? Because during these moments, the brain isn't overloaded with constant external input. It finally has room to think. Imagine your mind as a large library. Every day, thousands of new books arrive. New videos, new articles, new conversations, new emails, new posts, new notifications. If books keep arriving without anyone organizing the shelves, eventually the library becomes chaotic. Finding anything becomes difficult. Your brain works in much the same way. It doesn't only need time to collect information. It also needs time to organize it. Unfortunately, modern life leaves very little room for this process. The moment we experience even a few seconds of boredom, we immediately reach for a screen. Waiting for an elevator, check your phone, standing in a queue, scroll through social media, eating alone, watch videos, traveling on a bus, listen to something, walking, open another app. Little by little, boredom has almost disappeared from our lives. At first, that sounds wonderful. Who enjoys being bored? But Johann Hari argues that boredom has an unexpected purpose. Boredom creates space, and within that space, creativity grows. Without empty moments, imagination struggles to survive. Daniel remembered something from childhood. Long before smartphones became part of everyday life, summer afternoons often felt endless. Sometimes he complained that there was nothing to do. So he invented games, built imaginary worlds, read books, sketched random ideas, asked unusual questions. His creativity wasn't scheduled, it emerged because boredom gave it permission. Today, those empty moments rarely existed. Every spare second could instantly be filled with endless content. He began asking himself a difficult question. What if I hadn't become less creative? What if I've simply stopped giving my brain the opportunity to create? That question stayed with him for days. Soon he noticed something fascinating. Whenever he resisted the urge to immediately fill every quiet moment with digital stimulation, his thinking changed. He became more reflective. Instead of reacting to every event, he started processing them. Instead of constantly consuming ideas created by other people, he slowly began producing ideas of his own. There is an important difference between consuming information and creating understanding. Imagine pouring water into a glass without ever giving it time to settle. The surface remains disturbed, everything appears cloudy. Only when the water becomes still can you clearly see through it. Our minds work similarly. Constant input keeps our thoughts permanently unsettled. Silence allows clarity to emerge. Johann Hari believes this constant interruption doesn't only affect productivity. It changes the way we understand ourselves. If every free moment is occupied by someone else's opinions, entertainment, advertisements, and algorithms, when do we actually hear our own thoughts? This question is more important than it first appears. Because identity isn't formed only by what we consume. It is formed by what we reflect upon. Without reflection, life gradually becomes reactive instead of intentional. Daniel noticed another subtle change. He no longer felt compelled to respond immediately to every message. Previously, every notification created a sense of urgency. Now he paused. He asked himself a simple question before unlocking his phone. Do I actually need to check this right now? Surprisingly, most of the time the answer was no. That single question gave him something incredibly valuable. Choice. For years, he had believed he was choosing to check his phone. In reality, many of those actions had become automatic. Awareness transformed unconscious habits into conscious decisions. And every conscious decision strengthened his sense of control. One afternoon, Daniel met Ethan again. This time, instead of discussing productivity, they talked about creativity. Daniel admitted something surprising. I feel like my ideas are getting better. Ethan smiled. They probably are, but I'm actually consuming less content than before. Exactly. Ethan leaned forward. Think of your brain like a garden. If you constantly plant seeds without giving them sunlight, water, or time to grow, nothing meaningful develops. Information is only the seed. Reflection is what helps it grow. Daniel thought about that for a moment. For years he had measured learning by the amount of information he consumed. More books, more podcasts, more videos, more articles. He assumed that consuming more automatically meant becoming wiser. Now he realized that wisdom doesn't come from information alone. It comes from understanding. Understanding requires time, and time requires attention. This explains why reading one thoughtful book slowly can sometimes change your life more than skimming 50 books in a hurry. Knowledge enters through information. Wisdom develops through reflection. The modern world gives us endless opportunities to gather information. Very few opportunities to digest it. Johann Hari warns that this imbalance has serious consequences. People often mistake familiarity for understanding. Watching hundreds of short educational videos creates the feeling of learning. But genuine learning demands something deeper. Questioning, connecting ideas, testing assumptions, reflecting on experiences, applying knowledge in real life. None of these processes happen instantly. They require patience. Daniel started protecting small pockets of silence throughout his day. He stopped reaching for his phone while eating breakfast. He occasionally sat near the window with nothing but a cup of coffee and his thoughts. He took short evening walks without headphones. These changes seemed insignificant, yet within weeks, he noticed remarkable differences. His anxiety became quieter. His thoughts became more organized. His conversations became deeper because he listened more carefully. Even his memory improved. Instead of jumping endlessly from one stimulus to another, his brain finally had enough time to absorb what mattered. One evening, while watching the sunset from a nearby park, Daniel realized something profound. For years he had been searching for better productivity techniques, faster learning methods, more efficient schedules, smarter applications. But perhaps the greatest improvement hadn't come from adding something new. It had come from removing constant noise. Sometimes growth doesn't begin when we discover another tool. Sometimes it begins when we create enough silence to hear ourselves think again. And that silence, in today's world, may be one of the rarest and most valuable resources we still have. Because when attention returns, something else quietly returns with it. Curiosity, creativity, clarity, and eventually, the ability to build a life directed by our own choices instead of endless digital distractions. But as Daniel's focus slowly improved, Johann Hari introduces another uncomfortable truth. The battle for attention is not only happening inside our phones. Some of the most powerful forces stealing our focus exist far beyond technology itself. They are built into the way modern society works, shaping our lives in ways most of us never notice. For a long time, Daniel believed that recovering his focus was simply a matter of building better habits. He had reduced his screen time. He had started protecting blocks of uninterrupted work. He had learned to appreciate silence instead of constantly filling it with content. Life was certainly improving, yet something still didn't feel quite right. There were days when he slept well, stayed away from social media, followed his schedule, and still found it difficult to think clearly. His attention felt heavier. His motivation faded more quickly. His mind seemed tired before the day had even properly begun. At first, he blamed himself again. Maybe he wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe he needed another productivity technique, another book, another routine, another app. But Johann Hari encourages us to ask a different question. What if attention isn't influenced only by our personal habits? What if the world around us quietly shapes our ability to think? This is where the book begins expanding beyond technology. Because while smartphones certainly steal attention, they are only one piece of a much larger puzzle. Imagine trying to read a difficult book in the middle of a crowded marketplace. People are shouting, vehicles are passing by, music plays from nearby shops, conversations overlap. Every few seconds, something new competes for your awareness. Would you blame yourself for struggling to concentrate? Probably not. Most people would recognize that the environment itself makes focus difficult. Now think about modern life. Our physical surroundings may seem calmer than a busy marketplace, but mentally they are often even noisier. Deadlines compete with emails, messages interrupt meetings, news updates interrupt conversations, advertisements interrupt websites. Notifications interrupt almost everything. Many people begin their mornings by exposing their brains to hundreds of pieces of information before they have even finished breakfast. Without realizing it, we spend entire days reacting instead of thinking. Daniel started paying closer attention to his routine. The moment he woke up, he reached for his phone. News headlines, weather updates, messages, emails, social media. By the time he stood up from bed, his brain had already processed dozens of unrelated topics. His attention was scattered before his day had even started. He wondered what would happen if he reversed the order. The next morning, instead of reaching for his phone, he simply sat quietly for 10 minutes. He opened the window, he listened to the birds outside, he stretched, he drank a glass of water. Only after finishing breakfast did he check his messages. The difference surprised him. Nothing dramatic had changed, yet his thoughts felt calmer. He didn't begin the day reacting to everyone else's priorities. He began by connecting with his own. That small shift changed the tone of his entire morning. Johann Hari reminds us that attention isn't just about saying no to distractions. It's also about deciding what deserves your first attention every day. Because whatever captures your mind first often shapes everything that follows. There is another hidden factor that most people rarely consider: stress. Modern society often celebrates stress as proof of ambition. People proudly announce that they're overwhelmed. Busy calendars become symbols of importance. Working late is praised. Constant pressure is normalized. But our brains were never designed to remain under continuous stress. When the body senses danger, it releases hormones that prepare us for survival. This response is incredibly useful during genuine emergencies. If you're escaping danger, your body should become alert. Your attention should narrow. Your focus should move toward immediate survival. The problem is that modern stress rarely ends. Financial worries, academic pressure, work deadlines, family responsibilities, health concerns, economic uncertainty. The body often reacts to these pressures as though danger never disappears. Living in this state for weeks, months, or years changes the way we think. Long-term stress doesn't sharpen attention. It fragments it. Your brain becomes more interested in immediate relief than deep concentration. This explains why many people struggle to focus during emotionally difficult periods. The problem isn't intelligence. The brain is simply trying to protect itself. Daniel noticed this pattern in his own life. Whenever he felt anxious about an upcoming deadline, concentrating became almost impossible. He kept switching between tasks, reading emails, checking messages, opening new browser tabs. He wasn't actually solving his problems. He was searching for temporary relief from uncomfortable emotions. Once he recognized this pattern, he stopped attacking the symptom. Instead, he became curious about the cause. Whenever he found himself endlessly scrolling, he asked a simple question: what am I trying not to feel? Sometimes the answer was stress. Sometimes it was uncertainty. Sometimes loneliness. Sometimes fear of failure. The scrolling wasn't the real problem. It was the escape. Recognizing that truth made a remarkable difference. Instead of automatically distracting himself, he occasionally chose something healthier. A short walk, writing down his thoughts, talking with a trusted friend, practicing deep breathing for a few minutes. None of these solutions were magical. But unlike endless scrolling, they addressed the actual emotion rather than temporarily hiding it. Johann Hari also explores another important idea. Human beings are deeply social creatures. For thousands of years, our survival depended on strong communities. We solved problems together, shared responsibilities, supported one another during difficult times. Today, despite being more digitally connected than ever before, many people feel increasingly isolated. Ironically, constant online interaction can sometimes replace meaningful real-world connection without truly satisfying our emotional needs. Think about the difference between sending a quick message and having a heartfelt conversation with someone sitting beside you. Both involve communication, but they affect us very differently. Meaningful relationships provide emotional stability, and emotional stability supports attention. When we feel safe, understood, and connected, our minds become calmer. When we feel isolated, anxious, or disconnected, our thoughts naturally become more scattered. Daniel reflected on his own routine. He spent hours communicating every day, yet many of those interactions were brief. likes, comments, short messages, emoji reactions. He realized he hadn't spent time talking with close friends in weeks. So he made another experiment. Instead of chatting online, he invited two old friends to meet for dinner. They left their phones on the table, face down. For nearly 3 hours they simply talked. They laughed about old memories, discussed their careers, shared worries about the future, listened without rushing. When Daniel returned home, he noticed something unexpected. His mind felt lighter. The problems that had seemed overwhelming earlier in the week suddenly felt more manageable. Nothing external had changed, but emotionally, he felt stronger. Johann Hari argues that restoring attention isn't only about protecting the brain from technology. It's also about nourishing the human needs that technology often replaces but cannot fully satisfy. We don't simply need fewer distractions. We need richer lives. Because when life itself becomes meaningful, endless digital stimulation loses much of its power. Another hidden obstacle to attention is something many people underestimate: sleep. Modern culture often treats sleep as something optional. People proudly claim they only sleep 4 or 5 hours each night. Success is sometimes associated with sacrificing rest. But science consistently tells a different story. During sleep, the brain performs essential maintenance. Memories become stronger, information is organized, emotions are processed, mental energy is restored. Without enough quality sleep, attention naturally declines. No amount of coffee can completely replace genuine rest. Daniel realized he had been stealing time from tomorrow in order to squeeze a little more entertainment into tonight. Late-night videos felt harmless, but every extra hour reduced the quality of the following day. Instead of waking refreshed, he woke mentally exhausted. He decided to create a simple evening ritual. An hour before bed, screens disappeared. The lights became softer. He read a physical book for a while. Sometimes he simply reflected on the day in a notebook. The first week felt unusual. The second week felt easier. By the third week, waking up no longer felt like a battle. His concentration during the morning improved naturally. Not because he had discovered another productivity trick. Because he had finally given his brain what it genuinely needed. This reveals one of the deepest messages in stolen focus. Attention isn't built through a single habit. It grows from an entire ecosystem. Your sleep affects your focus. Your stress affects your memory. Your relationships affect your emotional stability. Your environment affects your concentration. Your habits affect your creativity. Everything is connected, and perhaps this is why so many quick fixes fail. We search for one perfect solution while ignoring the larger system surrounding us. Real change rarely comes from one dramatic decision. It comes from dozens of small improvements working together. As Daniel slowly rebuilt that system, he discovered something remarkable. Focusing no longer felt like fighting against himself. Instead, it felt like cooperating with the way the human mind was always meant to work. And just when he believed he had uncovered the biggest reasons behind the attention crisis, Johann Hari introduces an even more surprising idea. Some of the forces damaging our ability to focus begin long before we ever pick up a phone. They begin in the way modern society teaches us to live, learn, and even define success itself. As Daniel continued reading Stolen Focus, he realized that the book was asking a much bigger question than he had expected. It wasn't simply asking why individuals struggle to pay attention. It was asking why an entire generation, across different countries, professions, and age groups, is experiencing the same problem at the same time. When millions of people face the same challenge, it's worth considering whether the issue is personal at all. Imagine walking into a garden where every single plant is beginning to wilt. Would you conclude that each plant suddenly became weak? Probably not. You would examine the soil, the water, the sunlight, the environment. Because when an entire system begins producing the same outcome, the root cause usually lies within the system itself. Johann Hari encourages us to look at our attention in exactly the same way. Instead of constantly asking, "What's wrong with me?" we should also ask, "What has changed in the world around me?" That shift in perspective changes everything. Because the answer is far bigger than smartphones. It includes the way we work, the way we study, the way we consume information, the way businesses compete, and even the way society defines success. For decades, Productivity has been measured using one simple idea: do more, answer more emails, attend more meetings, complete more tasks, consume more information, learn more skills, stay available at all times. First glance, this sounds reasonable. After all, being productive is generally seen as a positive thing. But Daniel noticed something strange. The people around him were doing more than ever before. Yet many of them felt more mentally exhausted than previous generations. They had faster computers, smarter phones, better internet, artificial intelligence, cloud storage, automation. Technology was supposed to save time. So why did everyone seem busier than ever? This question lies at the heart of one of the book's most important ideas. Technology doesn't automatically give us back time. Very often, it simply changes how that time is used. Think about email. Originally, email was created to make communication easier. And in many ways, it did. But because sending emails became effortless, people simply began sending far more of them. The same happened with instant messaging. Instead of waiting hours or days for a reply, people began expecting answers within minutes. The speed of communication increased, but so did expectations. Soon, being constantly available became the new normal. Daniel thought about his own work. Whenever he tried focusing deeply, a new message appeared. If he ignored it, he worried that someone might think he was unprofessional. If he replied immediately, his concentration disappeared. He felt trapped between two competing expectations: produce meaningful work, remain constantly available. The problem was obvious. Deep work and constant interruption cannot exist together. They demand opposite ways of thinking. One requires uninterrupted concentration, the other rewards immediate reaction. Trying to excel at both simultaneously often leaves us exhausted. Johann Hari points out that many workplaces unintentionally create environments where employees are interrupted so frequently that meaningful concentration becomes almost impossible. Imagine trying to build a complicated puzzle. Every 5 minutes someone removes a few pieces and hands you another puzzle to solve. Would you finish either one efficiently? Of course not. Yet this is exactly how many people spend their workdays. Email, meeting, phone call, notification, another meeting, another email, a message, a document, a quick request, a surprise deadline. The brain keeps switching directions. Eventually, even simple decisions begin feeling mentally draining. Psychologists call this decision fatigue. Every choice requires mental energy. What should I answer first? Should I respond now or later? Should I finish this report or check that message? Should I continue reading or attend another meeting? Individually, these decisions seem insignificant. Collectively, they quietly drain our attention throughout the day. This is why many people feel strangely exhausted even after spending the entire day sitting at a desk. Mental work consumes energy just as physical work does. Daniel began noticing how many unnecessary decisions filled his mornings. Which email should I open first? Should I reply now? Maybe I'll just quickly check the news. Should I watch that recommended video? What should I work on next? By lunchtime, his attention already felt scattered. Not because he had completed meaningful work, because his brain had spent hours reacting. So he made another change. Instead of beginning each day by deciding what to do, he decided the night before. Before going to bed, he wrote down the 3 most important tasks for the next day. Nothing more, no endless to-do lists. Just 3 priorities. The next morning, instead of asking, "What should I work on?" he already knew the answer. That small habit removed dozens of unnecessary decisions. His mornings immediately became calmer. This illustrates an important principle. Focus doesn't only depend on removing distractions. It also depends on reducing unnecessary choices. Every unnecessary decision steals a little attention. Every planned decision protects it. Johann Hari also discusses another fascinating problem: the overwhelming amount of information surrounding us. Never before in human history have people had access to so much knowledge. Within seconds we can learn almost anything: history, science, languages, business, philosophy, medicine, technology. This is an extraordinary achievement. But abundance creates its own challenges. Imagine entering the world's largest library without a map. Millions of books surround you. Some are brilliant, others are misleading. Many contradict one another. Without guidance, finding reliable knowledge becomes difficult. The internet often feels exactly like that library. Every opinion competes equally for your attention. Every headline claims urgency. Every article promises the truth. Every creator believes their content deserves your time. The result isn't simply more information. It's information overload. When the brain receives more information than it can meaningfully process, several things happen. Attention becomes fragmented. Memory weakens. Decision-making slows. Stress increases. Ironically, having access to unlimited information can make clear thinking more difficult. Daniel recognized this pattern immediately. Whenever he wanted to learn something new, he often spent more time searching than actually learning. He opened dozens of tabs, compared different opinions, read comments, watched multiple videos, saved articles for later. Hours passed. At the end, he possessed plenty of information but very little understanding. He had confused collecting information with learning. There is an enormous difference. Information answers questions. Understanding changes behavior. You can read hundreds of books about fitness and still never exercise. You can watch countless videos about business without starting a company. You can consume endless motivational content while never taking meaningful action. Knowledge becomes valuable only when it transforms the way we live. Daniel realized he had unconsciously developed a habit that many modern people share. Whenever he encountered uncertainty, he searched for more information. Not because he truly needed it, because gathering information felt productive. In reality, it often became another form of procrastination. Instead of acting, he researched. Instead of practicing, he planned. Instead of creating, he prepared. Preparation is important, but endless preparation can quietly replace progress. Johann Hari reminds us that our brains were never designed to absorb unlimited streams of information every waking hour. They evolved in environments where knowledge arrived gradually. People had time to discuss ideas, reflect on them, test them, apply them. Today, information moves faster than reflection. As a result, people often know more facts while feeling less certain about what truly matters. Daniel decided to simplify his learning process. Instead of following 20 different creators discussing the same topic, he chose a few trustworthy sources. Instead of reading 5 books simultaneously, he focused on finishing one. Instead of watching endless educational videos, he spent more time applying what he learned. The results surprised him. He remembered more. He understood concepts more deeply. Most importantly, he felt less mentally overwhelmed. He finally understood that learning isn't a race to consume the greatest amount of information. It's the patient process of transforming information into wisdom. This realization became another turning point. Because attention isn't only stolen by entertainment. Sometimes it is stolen by endless information that feels useful but never becomes meaningful. And once Daniel understood that, he became much more careful about what he allowed into his mind. Because protecting attention isn't simply about saying no to distractions. It's also about saying yes only to information that truly deserves a place in your life. As Johann Hari continues his exploration, he introduces another idea that is even more surprising. Many of the problems we associate with poor focus are actually symptoms of something much deeper, a growing disconnection from the things that make us fully human. And understanding that disconnection may be one of the most powerful steps toward reclaiming not only our attention, but also the quality of our lives. As Daniel reflected on everything he had learned so far, he noticed a surprising change. His days were becoming more intentional. He no longer reached for his phone every few minutes. He had started protecting blocks of uninterrupted work. He had learned to appreciate silence instead of fearing it. He was sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and making decisions with greater purpose. Yet one question still lingered in his mind. If I can improve my focus by changing my habits, why does it still feel like I'm swimming against the current? Johann Hari argues that this feeling is not an illusion. The current is real. Modern society often moves in the opposite direction of deep attention. Many of the systems surrounding us are designed to encourage speed rather than depth, reaction rather than reflection, and consumption rather than creation. To understand this, imagine 2 different worlds. In the first world, success is measured by how carefully you think. People admire patience. Schools reward curiosity. Companies encourage employees to spend uninterrupted hours solving meaningful problems. Conversations are thoughtful, silence is respected. Now imagine another world. Everything moves quickly, every second counts. People expect immediate replies. Breaking news appears every hour. New trends replace old ones within days. Entertainment never stops. Algorithms constantly compete for your attention. Which world sounds more familiar? Most of us live in the second one. Without realizing it, we adapt to its rhythm. Our attention becomes shorter because everything around us becomes faster. Our expectations change. Waiting even a few seconds for a web page to load feels frustrating. Watching a 5-minute video can seem long. Reading a 30-page chapter begins to feel like a major commitment. The pace of technology quietly reshapes the pace of our minds. This is one of the most powerful observations in stolen focus. Attention is not only something we lose, it is something that is trained. Every habit strengthens a particular way of thinking. If we spend years consuming short bursts of information, our brains become increasingly comfortable with short bursts of attention. If we spend years engaging in deep reading, thoughtful conversations, and uninterrupted work, our capacity for sustained focus grows stronger. The brain constantly adapts to whatever we repeatedly ask it to do. Daniel remembered how difficult reading had become. A few years earlier, finishing a long novel felt natural. Now, after only a few pages, he often felt the urge to check something else. At first he assumed he had simply become less patient. Now he understood something different. His brain had been trained to expect novelty every few seconds. It wasn't incapable of deep focus. It had simply become accustomed to constant stimulation. This realization gave him hope. Because what is trained in one direction can also be trained in another. Habits shape the brain, and new habits can reshape it again. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. Modern culture often promises instant transformation. Change your life in 7 days. Become productive in 1 weekend. Master any skill with one simple trick. Real growth is rarely that dramatic. Think about planting a tree. You cannot water it once and expect it to become fully grown the next morning. Growth happens quietly, almost invisibly, day after day. The same is true for attention. Every uninterrupted reading session strengthens your concentration. Every walk without your phone strengthens your awareness. Every meaningful conversation strengthens your ability to listen. Every night of good sleep strengthens your memory. Individually, these improvements seem small. Together, they transform the way your mind works. Daniel decided to stop measuring success by dramatic breakthroughs. Instead, he focused on consistency. If he became 1% better each day, that would be enough. Some days he succeeded, other days he slipped back into old habits. Occasionally he spent an hour scrolling through videos. Sometimes he procrastinated, sometimes he became distracted again. But there was one important difference. He no longer interpreted setbacks as proof that he had failed. He understood that changing deeply rooted habits takes time. Instead of asking, "Why did I fail?" he asked, "What can I learn from today?" That simple shift made him far more resilient. One evening he met Ethan once again. "I still have bad days," Daniel admitted. "I thought once I understood all this, staying focused would become easy." Ethan smiled. "Do you think professional athletes never have difficult training sessions?" Daniel laughed. "Of course they do. Exactly. Progress doesn't mean perfection. It means recovering more quickly after setbacks. People often imagine discipline as never making mistakes. But real discipline is returning to what matters after you've been distracted." Daniel thought about that for a moment. It reminded him of physical fitness. Missing one workout doesn't destroy your health. Eating one unhealthy meal doesn't ruin your body. In the same way, one distracted afternoon doesn't erase months of progress. Consistency always matters more than perfection. Johann Hari repeatedly reminds us that reclaiming attention isn't about becoming a machine. It's about becoming more human. Machines process information endlessly. Humans need rest, reflection, connection, purpose, curiosity, joy. Attention flourishes when these needs are respected. It weakens when they are ignored. Daniel gradually noticed another interesting change. As his attention improved, his relationships improved as well. During conversations, he stopped checking his phone every few minutes. He listened more carefully. He noticed details he had previously overlooked. People felt genuinely heard. His friends began sharing deeper thoughts because they sensed his presence. This highlighted another important truth. Attention is one of the greatest gifts we can offer another person. When someone speaks and we trip without interrupting, judging, or reaching for our phone, we communicate something powerful. You matter. In today's distracted world, genuine attention has become increasingly rare. That rarity makes it even more valuable. Johann Hari argues that the attention crisis isn't only reducing productivity, it is weakening relationships. Families often sit together while everyone stares at separate screens. Friends need but divide their attention between conversations and notifications. Parents answer work emails while playing with their children. Children grow up believing divided attention is normal. Little by little, presence disappears. Daniel began experimenting with something simple. Whenever he met someone for coffee or dinner, he left his phone inside his bag, completely out of sight. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Then something wonderful happened. The conversations became longer. They became richer. Silences no longer felt awkward. Ideas developed naturally. Laughter came more easily. For the first time in years, he experienced what uninterrupted human connection truly felt like. He realized that attention isn't merely a productivity skill. It is the foundation of love, friendship, trust, learning, creativity, and meaningful work. Without attention, all of these become weaker. This may be the deepest message in the entire book. Our attention determines the quality of our lives because it determines where our lives are actually experienced. Where your attention goes, your life follows. If your attention constantly belongs to algorithms, endless notifications, and carefully designed distractions, much of your life quietly belongs there too. But if your attention belongs to your family, your dreams, your purpose, your work, your health, and the people you love, then your life gradually moves in that direction instead. Daniel no longer saw attention as merely another productivity technique. He saw it as the ability to consciously choose what kind of life he wanted to build. That realization changed everything, because the greatest danger isn't simply wasting time. The greatest danger is allowing someone else to decide where your attention, and therefore your life, will be spent. As Johann Hari approaches the final lessons of stolen focus, he leaves us with perhaps the most important challenge of all. Reclaiming our attention is not only a personal responsibility, it is also a collective one. Because some problems cannot be solved by individuals alone. They require families, schools, workplaces, technology companies, and society itself to rethink the way attention is treated in the modern world. And understanding that bigger picture may be the key to protecting future generations from facing an even greater attention crisis than the one we experience today. By this point, Daniel had stopped asking a question that had troubled him for years. How can I become more productive? Instead, he began asking a much deeper question. How do I build a life that deserves my full attention? At first, the difference between these two questions seemed small. But over time, he realized they led to completely different lives. The first question focuses on doing more. The second focuses on living better. Johann Hari argues that somewhere along the way, many of us became so obsessed with efficiency that we forgot to ask what all that efficiency was actually for. We optimize our calendars, we organize our tasks, we install productivity apps, we search for better routines. Yet sometimes we move faster without ever asking whether we are moving in the right direction. Imagine boarding a train that travels at incredible speed. The seats are comfortable, the engine is powerful, everything operates perfectly, but after several hours, you discover that the train is heading toward the wrong destination. At that point, speed becomes meaningless. Direction matters far more than velocity. Our attention works the same way. Protecting your focus is important, but protecting it for the right things is what truly changes your life. Daniel noticed that when he removed unnecessary distractions, something interesting happened. He suddenly had more free time. Not because the day became longer, because he stopped losing countless small moments. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 20 minutes somewhere else. Each interruption had once seemed insignificant. Together, they had quietly consumed hours every day. Now those hours returned. At first, he wasn't sure what to do with them. His old instinct was to consume more content. Watch another documentary, read another article, scroll through another feed. But then he remembered one of Johann Hari's central ideas. A meaningful life is not built only by consuming. It is built by creating. Creation doesn't always mean writing books or starting companies. A teacher creates understanding. A parent creates confidence in a child. A musician creates emotion. A gardener creates beauty. A student creates knowledge. An engineer creates solutions. Every meaningful contribution begins with sustained attention. Daniel decided to spend 1 extra hour each evening working on something that mattered deeply to him. Not because someone expected it. Not because it would immediately make money. Simply because it gave him a sense of purpose. At first, progress was slow. Some evenings he completed only a few pages. Other days he solved one difficult problem. Occasionally he made almost no visible progress at all. Months earlier, this would have frustrated him. Now he understood something important. Meaningful work compounds. Tiny improvements, repeated consistently, eventually become extraordinary results. Think about learning a musical instrument. The first day, almost nothing sounds beautiful. The second day feels only slightly better. Even after a month, progress may appear modest. But continue practicing for several years, and the difference becomes remarkable. Deep work follows exactly the same principle. The greatest achievements rarely happen in sudden bursts. They grow from thousands of moments of protected attention. Johann Hari reminds us that history's greatest thinkers, artists, scientists, and inventors didn't simply possess extraordinary intelligence. They possessed the opportunity to think deeply. Many of their breakthroughs emerge because they had enough uninterrupted time to wrestle with difficult questions. Today, uninterrupted thinking has become increasingly rare, which makes it even more valuable. Daniel began noticing something else. His patience was returning. Previously, if a task became difficult, he immediately searched for an easier alternative. Now he stayed with the discomfort a little longer. Whenever confusion appeared, he reminded himself, this feeling isn't failure, it's the beginning of understanding. That realization transformed the way he approached learning. Most people quit too early because they mistake confusion for inability. In reality, confusion often means the brain is building new connections. Think about assembling a complex puzzle. At first, the scattered pieces make no sense. You may even wonder whether they belong together. Gradually, patterns begin appearing. The picture becomes clearer. Learning follows the same process. If we escape every moment of uncertainty, we never reach understanding. Attention gives confusion enough time to become clarity. Daniel also realized that modern life often encourages comparison. Social media constantly exposes us to other people's achievements. Someone receives a promotion. Someone starts a successful business. Someone travels the world. Someone buys a new house. Someone appears happier. Someone appears wealthier. Without realizing it, we begin comparing our everyday reality with everyone else's carefully selected highlights. Comparison quietly steals attention. Instead of focusing on our own growth, we become distracted by someone else's journey. Johann Hari suggests that one of the greatest ways to reclaim attention is to reclaim perspective. Not everything deserves our concern. Not every opinion deserves our emotional energy. Not every headline deserves our time. Attention is limited. Spending it wisely requires learning to ignore what doesn't truly matter. Daniel made another simple rule. Before clicking on any article, video, or headline, he paused for a moment and asked himself, will this still matter to me next week? Surprisingly, the answer was often no. Many stories that seemed urgent disappeared from public conversation within a day or two. Hours of worry had been invested in events that quickly faded away. This helped him distinguish between urgency and importance. Urgency demands immediate reaction. Importance deserves thoughtful attention. Modern media often confuses the two. The loudest story is not always the most meaningful one. The newest information is not always the most valuable. Learning to recognize that difference became another way of protecting his focus. Johann Hari also explores the importance of purpose. Human beings naturally focus better when they understand why their work matters. Imagine asking two people to move heavy stones. One person believes the stones will simply be piled in another corner. The other believes those stones will become part of a hospital where lives will be saved. The physical effort is identical. The meaning is completely different. Purpose changes attention. When we understand why something matters, our minds willingly stay engaged for longer. Daniel reflected on his own goals. Previously, he studied mainly because exams demanded it. Now he connected learning to a larger vision. Every skill he developed could help him solve meaningful problems in the future. Expanded the way he understood the world. Every focused hour became an investment in the person he wanted to become. That shift transformed studying from obligation into opportunity. The work itself hadn't changed. Its meaning had. Johann Hari emphasizes that attention naturally follows meaning. This explains why people can spend hours immersed in activities they genuinely care about while struggling to concentrate for even 20 minutes on something that feels empty. Purpose doesn't eliminate effort, it makes effort worthwhile. Daniel slowly realized that protecting attention wasn't about creating a perfect routine. Life would always remain unpredictable. Unexpected problems would appear. Some days would be productive, others would not. The goal wasn't perfection. The goal was remembering what truly deserved his attention whenever distractions tried to pull him away. One rainy evening, he sat by his window watching people hurry through the streets below. Everyone seemed busy. Cars moved quickly. Phones glowed in people's hands. Advertisements flashed from giant digital screens. The entire city appeared to be competing for speed. Yet for the first time in years, Daniel didn't feel pressured to keep up. He understood something many people spend decades discovering. The value of your life is not determined by how quickly you move. It is determined by what receives your attention while you move. That realization brought him a quiet sense of peace. He no longer wanted to live on autopilot. He wanted to notice ordinary moments, meaningful conversations, beautiful sunsets, interesting books, challenging ideas, time with family, progress toward his dreams. Because these were the experiences that would ultimately shape his life, not the endless stream of notifications he had once believed were so important. As Johann Hari approaches the conclusion of Stolen Focus, he leaves readers with one final message that is both hopeful and challenging. Our attention may have been gradually stolen over many years, but it is not gone forever. Like a muscle that has weakened through neglect, it can become strong again. Recovering it will require patience, practice, awareness, and sometimes the courage to live differently from the world around us. But the reward is far greater than improved productivity. It is the opportunity to become fully present for the only life we ever have. There is an old story about a traveler who spent his entire life searching for a hidden treasure. He crossed mountains, sailed across oceans, explored forests, and visited distant cities. He collected maps. He listened to wise teachers. He solved difficult puzzles. Year after year, he believed that the greatest treasure in the world was waiting somewhere beyond the next horizon. Finally, after decades of searching, he met an elderly guide who asked him a simple question. "What exactly are you looking for?" The traveler answered without hesitation. "A better life." The guide smiled gently. "Then tell me," he asked, "how many sunsets did you actually watch while chasing it?" The traveler fell silent. He remembered rushing through beautiful places without noticing them, ignoring conversations with people he loved because he was too busy, missing birthdays, skipping family dinners, always believing that life would truly begin after achieving the next goal. The treasure he had been chasing wasn't waiting at the end of the journey. It had been quietly hidden inside the moments he had been too distracted to experience. Whether the story is real or imaginary doesn't matter. Its lesson is timeless. Attention is not simply about what we notice. It is about what we experience. Whatever receives our attention gradually becomes our life. This is perhaps the most profound message Johann Hari leaves us with in Stolen Focus. Attention is not merely a productivity tool. It is the foundation upon which our memories, relationships, ambitions, and identity are built. Think about your happiest memories. They probably aren't moments when you were multitasking. They aren't memories of checking notifications while talking to someone you love. They aren't memories of endlessly scrolling through social media. The moments we treasure most usually have one thing in common. We were completely present, whether it was celebrating with family, learning something that changed our perspective, watching a sunrise after a difficult night, achieving a goal we had worked toward for years, or simply laughing with close friends. Presence made those moments unforgettable. Without attention, even extraordinary experiences become blurry. With attention, Even ordinary moments become meaningful. Daniel finally understood why recovering his focus had changed so many parts of his life. His productivity improved, but that wasn't the greatest reward. His conversations became richer, his learning became deeper, his thinking became clearer, his relationships became stronger, his days felt longer, not because more hours had appeared, but because he was actually living inside them instead of rushing through them. One afternoon, while sitting in a quiet park, he noticed a little boy flying a kite. The child wasn't worried about capturing the perfect photograph. He wasn't checking messages. He wasn't thinking about tomorrow's deadlines. He was completely absorbed in that single joyful moment. Daniel smiled. Children naturally understand something adults often forget. Attention is the doorway through which wonder enters our lives. As we grow older, responsibilities naturally increase. Work becomes demanding. Families require our care. Goals become more ambitious. There is nothing wrong with any of these things. The problem begins when we become so occupied with preparing for life that we stop experiencing it. Johann Hari reminds us that the purpose of reclaiming attention isn't to reject technology or abandon modern life. Technology has brought extraordinary benefits. We can learn almost anything from anywhere. We can communicate across continents in seconds. Medical discoveries happen faster than ever. Education is more accessible than previous generations could have imagined. The goal isn't to fear technology. The goal is to use it consciously rather than allowing it to use us. Technology should remain a tool. It should never quietly become the master of our attention. This distinction is incredibly important. Many people assume the solution is deleting every app, throwing away smartphones, or disconnecting completely. For most people, that isn't realistic. Nor is it necessary. The real challenge is learning intentional use. Ask yourself before opening any application, why am I here? If you have a clear purpose, use it. Complete the task, then leave. Without intention, it becomes very easy to wander endlessly through recommendations designed to keep you engaged. Johann Hari also encourages us to remember that attention is not only an individual responsibility. Families can create healthier habits together. Schools can teach students how attention works instead of assuming concentration happens automatically. Workplaces can value meaningful results over constant availability. Technology companies can design products that respect users instead of exploiting psychological vulnerabilities. Governments and researchers can continue exploring policies that protect mental well-being in the digital age. Real change becomes stronger when individuals and society move in the same direction. Daniel often thought back to the day he first blamed himself for losing focus. He had believed he was lazy, weak, undisciplined. Now he knew a different truth. He had been fighting against systems specifically designed to fragment attention. Understanding that reality didn't remove personal responsibility. Instead, it gave him compassion. He stopped treating himself like the enemy. He became an ally to his own mind. That shift made lasting change possible. There will always be distractions. New technologies will continue appearing. Algorithms will become smarter. Information will grow faster. The world will probably become even noisier in the years ahead. But amid all that noise, one choice will always remain ours. Where will we place our attention? Every morning we make that decision. Every conversation, every page we read, every meal we share, every hour we spend creating instead of merely consuming. Tiny choices rarely feel significant in the moment, yet they quietly shape the direction of an entire lifetime. Imagine your attention as a beam of light. Whatever it shines upon grows brighter. If it constantly shines on fear, fear expands. If it shines on comparison, comparison grows stronger. If it shines on anger, anger occupies more space. But if it shines on learning, compassion, purpose, curiosity, health, family, meaningful work, and genuine human connection, those parts of life gradually become stronger instead. That is why attention is so powerful. It determines not only what we notice, it determines who we become. Daniel eventually developed one final habit. Every evening before going to sleep, he asked himself a single question. Did I spend today's attention on the things that truly matter? Some nights the answer was yes. Some nights it wasn't. Whenever the answer was no, he didn't criticize himself. He simply adjusted the next day. Because reclaiming attention is not one grand decision. It is thousands of small decisions made over a lifetime. And perhaps that is Johann Hari's greatest lesson. The attention crisis isn't hopeless. Human beings have adapted before. We have overcome enormous challenges throughout history by understanding them, learning from them, and choosing better paths. We can do the same again. Every moment you resist distraction. Every page you read with complete concentration. Every meaningful conversation where your phone remains out of sight. Every walk, where you simply observe the world around you. Every hour spent creating instead of endlessly consuming. You reclaim another small piece of your attention. And little by little, you reclaim your life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Stolen Focus by Johann Hari. If this summary helped you see your attention in a new light, consider sharing it with someone who might need this message today. Sometimes one thoughtful conversation can change the direction of another person's life. And if you enjoy deep, practical, and life-changing book summaries that help you grow one idea at a time, make sure to subscribe to Volume and Vision and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Until next time, remember this: your attention is your most valuable resource. Spend it carefully, because the way you invest your attention today is the life you will be living tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next book summary.